Live, the winding queues continue this week as students flock in to register at the country's tertiary institutions. While many students have pinned their hopes on President Jacob Zuma's announcement in December last year on the possibility of a free higher education for the poor, the matter of fees and where the money is going to come from is still very much unclear. Higher Education Minister Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize said they still have to interpret the announcement and look at its implications realistically. Joining us now in our studio is Professor Ahmed Bawa. He is the CEO of University South Africa. But just before we talk to Prof, let's take a look at what the minister had to say about the announcement.
I think from last year, when the president announced changes in our policies, I must say we got very busy and we didn't have much time. So I suppose this year is fitting in with really the spirit of having to interpret the announcement, having to have conversations amongst ourselves with the stakeholders, and also monitoring now from this week as to the implications realistically on our campuses.
All right, and as I said, we're joined by Professor Ahmed Bawa. He's the CEO of University South Africa. Prof, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much indeed. Let's start with what the minister had to say on that clip. And I know that there was a meeting between yourself and the vice chancellors from the 26 universities in South Africa and the Department of Higher Education. What came out of that meeting? Well,
the focus of the meeting was really to try and understand how to implement the proposed changes that have been made. Very soon after the meeting, the announcement on the 16th of December, we determined, in fact, that the new system was a fait accompli. And essentially what that meant really was that our role now was really to try and understand how to roll out the new system, if you like, and have a decent start to the academic year. We did actually raise our concerns about sustainability and so on, and we'll continue to do that. But at the present time, our focus is primarily on having a decent start to the academic year.
But are you much more clearer now? You were very skeptical as to how this is going to work, but do you have a clearer picture as to how things will look like?
I think we have a clearer idea. The really big challenge is that there are many uncertainties. And I think that we're going to just have to manage the risks as they emerge. For example, I mean, we really don't know at this stage in time just what the big demand, whether there is going to be a big demand for places, because the number of places in the universities is very restricted. It's a large number, but very restricted, if you like. And then there are other issues related to how the system will be rolled out over the next 5 years and who's impacted in the first year and then in the second year and so on. So we focused very much on that. And of course, one of the big challenges we face is just the danger, not the danger, but rather the possible outcome of the calls made by the EFF and so on that students should really pitch up on campuses. While we think that the EFF was correct in identifying those students, what we really want to suggest, of course, is that we do this in a way that doesn't cause the potential for danger. And
now this uncertainty that you're referring to, we had a broadcast yesterday at the University of Johannesburg, and I think that's the feel that many universities have. Let's talk about the implementation of this free higher education for the poor, the practicalities thereof. How is it going to work? Will the tertiary institutions still be able to determine their own fees?
Yeah, look, the change in the model isn't what the president has called a free education system. The change in the model is the following. That is that the loan system that NSFAS used to run will now become a bursary system. And the bursaries are going to be called DHET bursaries. And so that's a very big change, by the way, because what it means is that students don't have to repay those.
It's a bursary in this
instance. That's correct. Yeah. Okay. The second big change, of course, and it is a mighty big change, is that the capping, the NSFAS capping has been raised from 122,000 to 350,000. And as the president correctly indicated in his speech, what that does is that it provides the opportunity for young people from 90% of South African households to access higher education without the families being concerned about where the money is going to come from. if they've been admitted to a university position.
So if you're talking about 90% of family households, that's a huge number.
It is.
Did you get anything as to where the money is going to come from? Because I think that's been the major concern.
No, actually, we are in the dark about that. And in fact, the minister indicated that that will really be announced by the Minister of Finance in February.
So they're probably still trying to find.
Yeah, well, we don't know.
Sources,
we don't really know the source of the money, and I think that and that's part of our concern, of course, because by now we would have liked to have had a clear indication that that this is sustainable into the future.
And doesn't that put tertiary institutions in an awkward position? I mean, 3 weeks away from the beginning of the official beginning of the academic year.
Yes. I know that the department and the minister are irritated when I say this, but we would really have liked 6 months or a year to kind of roll in this big change in the system. Instead, we've got 2 to 3 weeks. So what that means is that the risk of errors being made, crushes at the universities, all those kinds of things really rise. And so that's a deep concern to us here.
Yeah, and your concern really was a situation where the government might need to reverse the model in 3 years' time. After your meeting, are you convinced that this is going to be sustainable?
Look, we're taking the department, at this point in time, we're taking the department at its word. And they are saying that they've been in discussions with Treasury and that together they've produced a model which is a sustainable model. We don't know what that is yet. They haven't kind of told us what it is. But, we don't have much of an option, really, because the announcement on the 16th was really an announcement of the government. Yeah. And basically our challenge was now to understand how to implement it.
All right. So as you're sitting here as the CEO of University of South Africa, you have to see what happens in 3 weeks. You really don't have much information into this, besides the fact that universities will have to find ways to sort of implement this decision.
That's correct. And we'll do it with the department and with NSFAS. We've determined now that we are determined, in fact, to do this, to make this work. I mean, because if it is a sustainable model and if we can get it to work, it has huge implications for the affordability of higher education. The question is, whether it is affordable and whether we can roll it out in a way.
And I think that's really the question. If one takes a look at the recommendations that the model will only be sustainable for TVET colleges, but now it's applicable to all universities.
That's correct. Yes.
So I think that's where the major challenge is as well.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think everybody is asking, is it affordable? I mean, the fact of the matter is that whenever we put proposals to Treasury in the past, it was always there's no money. And so now the question is, just where is the money going to come from?
Sure, Professor. Suppose we'll wait and see what happens in 3 weeks' time. Thank you so much indeed for coming through.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much indeed. That was Professor Ahmed Bawa. He is the CEO of University of South Africa, a body representing all the universities in South Africa, shedding more light on the current status as far as the fees issue is concerned. Of course, they had a meeting with the Department of Higher Education on Monday, and from what Prof is saying, we'll wait and see what happens in 3 weeks' time. Let's take a quick break. You're on Morning Live. Your sports news will follow with Valen.